Okay, we'll move straight on to our next company, which is Life360. Again, a company that should be well known to the Bell Potter network post the IPO a couple of years ago. The company's gone from strength to strength and beat its prospectus forecast in 2019, seems a long time ago, and then delivered strong revenue growth in 2020 despite the impact of COVID. Life360 is now a beneficiary of lockdowns easing and countries opening up again, at least in the Northern Hemisphere. And this was evident in the recent result when first half revenue grew by 27%. Presenting from the company today is founder and CEO Chris Hulls. Chris is a top 5 shareholder in the company with around a 6% stake. The timing of the presentation is good as school has just gone back in the US, and this tends to be a key driver of new users. So for an update on that and more, it's over to you, Chris.
Thanks for having me, Chris, and very excited to be able to present today. And as mentioned, back to school is our Christmas season, and we are very proud to announce and continue to share that the back to school season has been great. And so much of what was a headwind during COVID has very much turned into a tailwind because we're coming out as a world that's much more digitally connected, and it's been great to see how quickly we are rebounding, in particular in areas like the US where vaccines have rolled out and their presence is being felt. So I have a few things I'm going to cover today. I'll give a quick intro to the company. I'll share a little bit more about our results, cover our key strategic initiatives, and give a Q3 update, and then do a little bit of Q&A with you, Chris. So I'm going to jump into some numbers, but for starters, even though I know most people are familiar with the company, I'd like to very quickly just recap what we do without any slides. So our 100,000-foot view, 10-year mission is be the family network in the same way that Facebook built the social network, LinkedIn built the professional network. In and of itself, that's obviously a very abstract vision. If you look at what we do today, there's really two parts of it. There's our mobile app, which was the original location sharing service on smartphones, but now we've built it specifically for the family. So I hate describing it this way, but an easy way to think about it is find my friends on steroids with family-specific features from physical safety, digital safety, driver safety, little things like knowing when a family member's battery's low, to getting alerts when your kids get to school, knowing if someone's texting and driving. Those are all things you can do with the Life360 app. Then on top of it, that's free. We have our premium membership, which is a whole bunch of premium services that help keep you safe across everything you might worry about as a family, from knowing you're safe while you're driving with things like automatic crash detection and emergency dispatch to our 27 human monitored SOS. It's things that people are paying a lot of money for now that we can do a lot cheaper by being a mobile first product. Some highlights on the numbers. I won't read all of these things, but some really big milestones we crossed this year. Over 30 million active users, 1 million paying families, even more than subscribers, about 4 million people paying, over 100 million of annualized monthly revenue, all US dollars, and recently joined the ASX 300. When I mentioned that we are a mobile app, we have safety services on top of that, I do want to double click on that a little bit. Just to reinforce that although we are an app, much of our impact is in the real world. So the feature I'm personally most proud about is our automated and crash detection response service, where we can see if anyone in your family has been in an accident and purely through the sensors on the phone, detect that and get you an ambulance, even if you can't ask for help. So in just the last 6 months alone, we had over 7,000 ambulances dispatched to real emergency situations. And we literally have saved hundreds of lives, which is something that gives us a lot of motivation and pride in what we do. And then beyond that, very good business in that it is now, especially in the US, known that Life360 is a leader in this space. And if you are a parent with teens, it's just very quickly becoming something that's almost like a rite of passage around just what you do when your kids are getting independence. We've also been around quite a while. We were one of the launch apps on the Android platform over 10 years ago now. And although this looks like an app, there's really a lot to it. We have our core location sharing service, but each year we've built more and more towards our platform. And in the last 5 years alone, we've spent over $130 million in R&D with 25 patents issued or pending. And while there's a lot of complexity across the system, the real bread and butter of our product is what we call our location engine. So we have billions and billions of data points coming to our service every few hours. We're so big now that over 10% of miles driven in the US come through the Life360 platform. And to do all this at scale is extremely hard. And so I won't go into each piece of this, but across things like reliability, accuracy, battery life, latency, to do any one of these things is easy, two is difficult. To do it all at once together is actually a very difficult technical challenge. And we as a company have done better than anyone else in the space. And whereas our lead right now really is the brand and the reach, in our early days, it was the technology, it was the differentiator, and it does remain a very powerful barrier to entry. And as a business, we follow a freemium model. And I'd like to explain this a little bit because it's something that we found that most Australian investors are less familiar with. As users, everyone uses Facebook and freemium apps and things like that, where you're not actually paying for the core service and you monetize in other ways. I just want to explain what that means for Life360. So right now, essentially all our customers download the app for free. They don't come in as paid customers. And that's that 32.3 million number you see in the top right circle. We make most of our money from people who become subscribers who pay us for those premium services. So about 1 million families, 3.5, 4 million total users. That generated 36.4 million in H1 of this year. And then on top of that, we have our indirect revenue, which is money we make from our entire user base, whether or not they're directly paying us. This is our early forays into lead gen around things like auto insurance based on how you drive. And then also our de-identified data platform where third parties can tap into our users and get insights into what different people are doing in an anonymized way. And they just pay us as a whole for that. And that's how we make our business. And it's a huge advantage when you become freemium, because if you can make the model work, you have very, very significant reach that the direct to premium competitors just can't do. So then from a brand and marketing standpoint, you get big wins in terms of the efficiency you can generate. And when I mentioned our primary monetization being our member offering, this is a quick snapshot of what you get when you become a member. I'm not going to read all of these, but the bottom line is from roadside safety to physical safety, identity safety, phone protection, physical safety. These are all things that can be covered with Life360, where people are already paying more for legacy services. So I know this is a virtual conference. I can't do a show of hands, but as one example, I like to highlight of like why this is a great value. It's like who pays for NRMA, and we have AAA in the US. If you look, if people are playing the game, many of you are raising your hands. You can essentially get what you're paying for now with NRMA and a whole lot more for a fraction of the cost. And because of our mobile economics, where we don't pay to acquire most users, we have huge word of mouth growth. The marginal cost of adding additional customers is very low. There's no sales team. We are literally 90% lower cost than if you were to buy these same features independently on a standalone basis. And because we have this free user base who comes to the app every day and they're very engaged with it, it's a very natural way to tie together a bundle of services. And a lot of what we're trying to do over time is add more and more value to our bundle in a way where the point solutions really can't compete. So that's the company in a nutshell in terms of what we do. I want to quickly hit on some key H1 results. So as mentioned, things are really accelerating as we come out of COVID. So even during COVID, we grew in every quarter, but now that vaccines are rolling out, most of our revenues in the US, and we're obviously doing pretty well here, not necessarily in terms of case numbers, but in terms of getting our routines back. We had one of our biggest jump ups in quarterly revenue ever. And actually in the US, it was our single biggest jump in membership revenue, which is our primary way of monetizing in the company's history. And you can see that other than that COVID blip, we've been growing at a very healthy clip for a number of years. A lot of that growth is driven by underlying monthly active users. That is our monetizable base. And you can see our US numbers in particular are very healthy. And a lot of what has been driving our growth, which is very relevant to some people who've been following the company, is virality on TikTok. During COVID, we actually became a target of attack for many teams. We've done an amazing job of turning around that sentiment. And now we are very regularly going viral on TikTok, and it's bringing us back to being front and center around the conversation people are having as the world reopens. So a lot of this would be happening anyway, but some of the concerns some people had was, hey, Life360 is not like a travel company where people are yearning to use it again. Are we going to become top of mind as the world reopens? And through these viral channels, we absolutely have. And coming to all-time highs in terms of new baselines, even after these higher surges around what our new download rate will be. I also mentioned membership. one thing that's important to note is that the comprehensive offering I mentioned it's only been out about a year, and the vast majority of our customers are on our legacy plans. So the plans I mentioned, the platinum, gold, and silver, you can see that's only about 40% of our US customers are on these new plans. And then if you look at what that translates into to average revenue per paying circle, which is a key driver of how we monetize and growth, we have a really strong tailwind here because at least for the next year, as people are moving on to these higher price plans, this ARPPC is going to continue to grow. And that does go straight to the bottom line because retention is staying very strong, even though we've raised prices quite significantly. And if you look at what's driving this, beyond just being able to charge more on a per subscriber basis, we are giving a lot of value. So it is increasing conversion. So if you look at our overall registrations, which is more on the free side, which is what drives paid, because as I mentioned, we're freemium. We did have a dip in COVID, but now we are back to pre-COVID highs. On top of that, we have all-time highs in terms of conversion, the number of people who are paying earlier on in the life cycle. And that does turn into what has been our single biggest net additions of paying subscribers ever in a quarter, this Q2. And through this, retention has been extremely strong. Even during COVID, we were able to maintain approximately 100% net revenue retention across the base. And that's as people churn, new people sign up within given cohorts. So it's a very, very robust model. I'll move now quickly to some of our key strategic initiatives. There are 3 big themes for the year. The first was build a very large base of mobile users. That is our bread and butter. Grow our membership offering to disrupt the legacy incumbents and give more and more value to our different packages, and expand what we do through things like additional lead gen and new services. And I'm not going to go through each of these, but I want to share a few highlights. So one of our big additions is moving into digital safety beyond physical safety. ID breaches and identity theft protection is a really big deal in the US and becoming a worldwide thing. Internet usage is up 25% during the pandemic. 1 in 3 of our own customers have experienced identity theft. And there are over 1 million children a year who have their identity stolen. And it's a bigger problem for families with kids when this happens, but there really isn't much on the market to serve families. And that's where Life 360 comes in. So we already did launch identity theft protection last year with membership. What we're doing now with data breach alerts is expanding the use of this product to an entire customer base, where everyone, including our free users, we are going to scan the dark web to tell you if anyone in your family has had a breach. An example of that's on the left of the screen. We'll forever monitor your names and your information. We'll tell you if a new breach happens. And then we'll also tell you how to solve it if something is discovered, which is going to be the case for most people. And when that comes up, we tell you how to do everything yourself, but it's a great upsell opportunity where we can also get you into our higher tiers. And as an example of this, you can come into our safety tab. You can see the different services and features. We then show you what can happen. Like, hey, we've told you there was a breach. We tell you that Life 360's identity theft protection service can solve it. It's a very natural and organic way to get people into these conversion flows, to show you how our trained operators can walk you through each step of the process when you have these types of incidents. And so a lot of our growth this year is not necessarily new features, but really expanding on the ones we already have around what we call membership V2. And that is part of what has been driving these very significant improvements in conversion over the last 12 months. Another thing we're doing is doing our first foray into brand advertising. Most of our growth over time had been word of mouth, just parents talking to parents. We've long wanted to talk about that bigger brand story that goes beyond just tracking and to giving you independence, giving you safety across a number of ways. And a lot of the success that we've had on TikTok and social platforms has been telling the story in a more irreverent way, being a little bit silly about it, acknowledging the awkwardness of tracking. And we have found that that's been such a big shift in terms of our perception, just doing that through our organic channels. We now are trying to replicate that on a national scale with our first brand campaigns. So I'd like to quickly turn to a quick video to introduce our new campaign of what we call Parent Puberty. So over to you to start the video, and then I'll come back and talk a little bit more.
Sit down, Mom.
Why are you in my room?
We need to have a talk.
Oh, no. Daddy's making fajitas, so
We need to have a talk. Sit down. You know, I'm growing up. And I've been noticing a few changes from you. You're always crazy and freaking out. Like, look, you sent me 43 text messages this week.
That you ignored.
I think you've started to go through parent puberty.
Gross.
No. Look, this app is called Life 360.
How do I use it?
Well, may seem weird in the beginning, but once you get the hang of it, it's easy. Life 360 is a complete family safety system. Look, it'll send you notification like when I leave school or when I get to practice, so you know that I'm safe. There's even crash detection for when I start driving. We'll get there. Life 360 has tons of ways to keep me safe. And you from being so, awkward. Hey, Mom. I guess I'm proud of you.
Well, thank you.
Start living Life 360.
So that's an example of what I'm really excited about, where we flip the narrative around in a genuine way, where we did not start the company for tracking or being an overbearing parent. We really started it with, hey, if you use Life 360 properly, you can give your kids more independence. And we think there's a much bigger story and a much bigger company to be built by not being fear-mongering and really saying, hey, this is about giving people that peace of mind and freedom to roam freely. And it worked extremely well through the organic channels, as mentioned, like TikTok. And I'm excited to launch this to this multi-channel brand campaign that isn't just TV, but spanning all the different channels out there. And hopefully this is a sign of things to come. And part of those types of collateral and materials that will really increase our footprint and move us being an app to a much bigger brand. So to end, one thing I want to share before we move to Q&A is there was a lot of concern with Delta. And at our earnings, we showed this slide, which was comparing how are we doing now with the Delta variant in comparison to that first wave, which was obviously a pretty big gut punch to us a bit over a year ago now. And we were very happy to announce that we are actually growing in the face of Delta in the US, whereas we did have that 50-60% decline in 2020. We don't usually show mid-cycle results, but given that there was this concern and given the importance of our back to school period, we felt it was important to give this update. And I am pleased to say that the momentum is continuing into the back to school season, which is the most critical period for the company. And so with that, I'm pleased to move over to Q&A. We've reaffirmed our updated and upgraded guidance of 120 to 125 million ARR. And thank you again for hosting me, and looking forward to answering any questions you have.
Thanks, Chris. Love the video. If I
A
can
little
just-
bit awkward, right? But that's the point.
I liked it. We spoke at the start, Chris, about just going back to school in the US. You suggested it's gone particularly well. Can you just talk us through if that's happened across every state, and if the trend in new user growth has been, the same over the last few weeks?
So I obviously can't comment on specific numbers we haven't disclosed, but I am happy to say that the overall trend is maintaining. And I reaffirm the upgraded guidance we shared just a few weeks ago. There's definitely noise across states and regions. It's very hard to extrapolate, because even within states, you have different pockets of politics. It is a shame that COVID has become something so political. And then also just the outbreaks happen in different areas. So my view from Delta is we really don't know how much it is impacting us. It's very clear that we would be doing better if it weren't for Delta. So as soon as that goes away, I think that's a nice tailwind. But just as an anecdote, my daughter's preschool, there was one kid who got sick in another classroom, and they shut down the whole school just from this one kid who had a positive test. So we're definitely not back to normal, and it's noisy. But what we can see is, and I can very safely say, is Americans are not going to put up with another lockdown. I'm not putting any value judgment around that, but I think it's pretty clear we have the vaccines, and we will be returning to normal in the midterm. So short of a new vaccine or new variant that truly evades vaccines, I do think COVID, at least in the US, will be fading in terms of it being a business impact to us. Another
Sure.
6 months or so till it's gone, but
Sure.
clear line of sight.
Okay, and forgive me, Chris, if you're starting to hate this question, but is there any update on the M&A front?
No official update. We genuinely have a few exciting threads that are open. We have shared that the companies we're looking at in the insurance space, there is a bit of a pricing challenge for us where the public market comps have fallen significantly while the private markets stay what we consider pretty inflated multiples. And while we're not necessarily looking at this as a multiples game, we're looking at more about entering a new category. We do want to be prudent stewards of capital, and we're patient. And much of the reason that we were looking at more aggressively moving off the ASX or doing a dual list was to try to get the share price up because we were feeling a little undervalued in the region. We're coming back where we still feel undervalued, and I think very objectively could look at any U.S. comp, and if we were trading here, it would be significantly higher. It's no longer quite as acute as it was 6 or 12 months ago. So we are being patient, and we do want to make sure that any deal we do is something that the entire market will recognize as one that is going to drive pretty immediate shareholder value.
And without getting too granular, I noticed in the last presentation you didn't mention SPAC. Does that mean
Yep.
the focus has shifted a bit and it's perhaps now more focused on making an acquisition in your own right rather than being acquired by a SPAC?
We are keeping all options open. SPACs have obviously fallen out of favor.
Yep.
And we have experienced what it was like to not have the momentum we felt we deserved on the ASX.
Yeah.
And so we do have some trepidation about doing a SPAC when, as of now, the companies that do that, there's definitely a category. These are SPAC companies versus real IPOs. That could change. The sentiment could change. We're definitely continuing to talk to SPACs. We do like that this is a buyer's market, so to speak, with us being the buyer in this case of SPACs. I guess technically a seller's market, given that we'd be selling to them. But we do think there's an opportunity to get favorable economics, but we do think long term. So we don't want to do something that would not set us up to be a marquee company. We are very happy that we have the momentum on the ASX now. We do feel like people are recognizing our value. And so all things considered, we'd rather be a marquee company here than do something that might have some level of baggage on it coming back home. And a bit of a sidebar, we are very excited about the ability to remain dual listed no matter what path we follow. And we think the Square and Afterpay transaction is a good example that very good companies do see the value of maintaining a footprint in two countries at once,
Nice.
namely the Australian markets.
Well, we like having you here. Slightly less serious question. So you certainly go above and beyond the usual charter of a CEO and, for instance, make videos poking fun at yourself to engage with teens. So what are some of the things or slightly unusual stuff you're doing now as CEO?
You know, I do it when it's needed, and I will do whatever. I'll take whatever I need to for the team if I think it's going to help the company. So with the TikTok thing, I had become a meme where, for people who are maybe not familiar with TikTok, everything's a song or a dance you can copy. And so the teens singled me out as a song where you'd basically, it was all nice. They Google who started Life 360, they find me, and then they beat me up. So I jumped into the fray more because I was personally the meme, and the whole thing started because I was at someone's house and they said, "Are you the TikTok guy?" And I asked them what they're talking about, and they showed me the videos, and there were 300 million views on it. So that was why I jumped in. I do think, so I'm not actually doing anything overly abnormal right now, other than I started growing the long hair to pretend I was getting fired from investors to the TikTok crowd, and then the share price keeps going up the longer the hair gets. So I'm assuming there's a correlation, so I'm rolling with it. But my job is actually, for the most part, a little more traditional and dull, and we are trying to take the TikTok success and formalize it. The brand campaign is an example of how we would scale that. We do have a group called Parenting 360 on TikTok, which anyone can look at. We have about 20 influencers who collectively have almost 50 million followers. They've kind of taken the taking the baton and running with it. I am always looking at new channels and opportunities. I think one of my strengths and the benefits of having a company that's founder led is there's usually the founders have the crazy creative ideas, and if you can balance with execution, it's a good thing to have a founder CEO. So I am constantly looking at new channels and new opportunities. I think there's a very exciting theme around how the world has moved digital so aggressively over the last 12 months. And so from a roadmap standpoint, I'm really thinking, how do we bring more communication elements to the app? We've talked a little bit about this, our transition from where are you to how are you. So that's probably traditional CEO stuff, but I see that in terms of, I think, a skill of looking a little bit around the corners. So finding ways where we move from location at more accelerated speeds. And then we do have some exciting things with some of the celebrity family advisory council we have on board. I am trying to find more guerrilla ways to leverage that type of marketing and PR. But otherwise, my job is back to being a relatively dull tech guy, and my influencer days are hopefully largely behind me.
All right, changing tack slightly. How excited are you about launching in Canada?
I'm trying to think why. Excitement's an interesting word. I get excited about crazy new stuff. This is the opposite. This is algebra. Long term, the company is clearly something that should be truly international. And when I say this is algebra, Canada is not going to move the needle for us. Okay. It's basically a tenth the size of the US. But what I am excited about genuinely is, can we create a playbook that says for us to move from the US only to whatever country, how long does it take? What are the challenges involved? What are the relationships you have to set up? And how quickly does that region start mirroring the same economics and behavior patterns of the United States? Our view is once we get some level of critical mass, we'll take over and just keep growing, because that's what's happened here. I think there's an open question from investors on, okay, it has been a home run in the United States. Can you replicate the success internationally? Yeah. I don't think there's much of a pushback that, like, the underlying emotion of safety and peace of mind and just the chaos of life, that does transcend all geographies and regions and classes. But what does that actual execution look like? So I am excited when I envision closing my eyes and thinking like, hey, can I come to the market next year and tell the narrative around, here's what happened in Canada, here's why we're going to increase spend, increase R&D to blow this out to a whole bunch of other regions. Because then I think international goes from something which is in the abstract relatively clear and obvious to something that's tangible with real hard numbers around it.
Sure. Probably time for one or two more, Chris, if you can. There's a couple of questions from the audience on what impact the recently developed Family Advisory Council has brought to the company. If you can talk to that a bit, please.
Sure. So I would put that as one straw in the camel's back across a number of things about making the brand bigger. So when we started the company, we were actually very intentional about not worrying about a brand. We had no marketing team. We actually embraced being a kid tracker because in the early days of the app, that is where there was actual demand. So we went to the demand where it was versus trying to create something that didn't exist. What we are doing, though, is we did this deal with the devil earlier on about being this very niche product. We moved to driving, which has already expanded us. Now we have membership. How do we now reinvent the company's narrative around this bigger thing? It is why we called our company Life 360. So it's not a pivot by any means, but we had this very holistic vision. And so a lot of what we need to do is build trust and establish ourselves as something mainstream. There still is a reticence and a kind of a slight disbelief that a mobile app can do all these things that we say it can do, from getting into a tow truck to detecting an accident, having a 24/7 on-call human always watching you. And so a lot of what we are trying to do is, how are we up there with these big legacy brands, like in the US, ADT, AAA, OnStar, where people don't have this suspicion, where they come to us because we're the trusted brand. So the celebrities are just one piece of that puzzle, where if you have these top tier names essentially vouching for the company in a number of ways with their dollars, with being part of this group, with saying they use it for their families, it helps that narrative. And it does all these things play together, and there's some gestalt effect where the whole is bigger than the sum of any individual part. And I do hope over time we are going to see more visibility from this group, and it could lead to things that are more formal endorsements. But I think a lot of what has been working well for us is stuff that is much more organic. And because our user base is so big, we do have these top tier celebrities using us in pretty big ways.
Great. Chris, we're just about out of time, so we'll wrap it up there. Thank you very much. Great presentation. Love the video.
Thank you.
Glad to hear school's
Thanks for
gone
having
back. Hopefully we can follow suit here as well. All right, so we'll
Take
wrap
care.
it up
Thanks a
there.
lot.
Thanks a lot, Chris.
Bye.